So Tamathy, let's give it up for Tamathy first. So Tamathy's been telling stories here for 10 years. She is a co-founding member of No Shame Eugene. Before No Shame Eugene, she performed in Roanoke at the No Shame chapter there and is responsible as anybody else for this whole thing happening. She tells stories. As you know, she is the oldest of 21 kids. I won't take the rest of her line, but most of her stories center around that. But tonight, because it's the anniversary, we thought we'd give you all a chance to request a story. Tamathy does not know what story it's going to be. So we are going to employ a special theatrical device from the top balcony. It is a giant inflatable die. So Tamathy does not know what it's going to roll, but we ask the audience, what do you want Tamathy to tell a story about? 1, ghosts. 2, current politics in D.C. and Congress. 3, zombie dog. 4, her family, of course, birthdays. Did you ever go swimming on vacation? What are your siblings doing today? 5, Mormons. And 6, Mormon cows. Somebody else wrote 7, which is optimistic. Since it's a 6-sided die, which is polygamy outlawed by the government when that's a violation of separation of church and state. Okay, so when you're all ready, Tamathy, are you ready? All right, when you're all ready, let's roll that die. 1, ghosts.
So my name is Tamathy, and I grew up in a small town in Missouri, and I'm the oldest of 21 children. There are 9 boys, 11 girls, no twins, same parents, and there were ghosts. So, Missouri is an extremely haunted state. You may think that they are just very politically backward, and that they are mean, grumpy people, and they are. But that's because their entire state is haunted. It makes them really miserable. But when I was a kid, we used to go to my grandmother's house, and we lived in a really small town. My grandmother lived outside of an even smaller town at the top of a hill, in a house that had been in the family for 3 generations. So my grandparents lived at the top of that hill, and my great-grandparents lived at the top of that hill. And they didn't have indoor plumbing, and they had a pump. Pumped in the kitchen from the well to get water, and they had a wood stove. And so going there was like going back in time and being surrounded by ghosts. We had lived, when I was very little, in the house down the country road from my grandparents. And I was very small, and I was asleep in my bed, so I was younger than 5, but I remember it so clearly, more than pretty much any other memory. I was asleep in my bed, and I woke up, and there was a window over the headboard of my bed, and I climbed up and turned around and looked out the window, and there was a woman's face in the window, and her face was completely expressionless, staring at me. So I turned back around and laid down and went back to sleep, and then I woke up and I was screaming and screaming and screaming because of what I saw, and my parents came in. So my parents at the time were 20, 22, 23 years old in this really old house out in the country with their 5 children. And so I told them what I saw, and my mom said, no, it was me. I was dressed up and I went inside to look in the window to see if you were asleep. But what scared me even more was I could see how scared my parents were. They were shaking, they were so scared and looking at each other, and their eyes were so big. But they got me to go back to sleep. And it wasn't until years later, after we'd moved away from that house, we moved pretty quickly after that. Fortunately, we were just renting, so we moved pretty quickly and moved to Illinois, moved completely out of the haunted state of Missouri. And it wasn't until I was older that they told me what they had been seeing, that when my mom would be in the house during the day and she'd put the kids to sleep, us down for a nap, she would hear someone running and turn just in time to see a little blonde girl run by. and then go and look, and we would all be asleep in our beds. Or she would see a man on the front porch, and she wouldn't open the door. She would say, "What do you want? What do you want?" And he would walk away and just disappear. And then there was a night that they were in bed, and my mom woke up, and that same man was standing at the end of their bed. And she touched my dad, and he woke up and saw him, and he disappeared. And then they slept with a rifle in bed. So they moved away, and it was even longer before I found out that a family had lived in that house. A man and his wife and his little girl. And the wife and little girl had died of an illness. And then the man had died in a tragic way. So eventually we moved back to Missouri, and we had to drive by that house to get to my grandmother's house. And I would look down the long lane at that house. I felt so drawn to it, but I would look away, try so hard not to look, so afraid that those ghosts would catch us, latch onto our car, and leave that house and follow us, even though they hadn't hurt us. But then when we'd go to my grandmother's house, it was so old, and sometimes I would spend the night. And when we spent the night, even though my grandparents had 8 children, there were only 2 bedrooms, and we all had to sleep in bed with my Aunt Laura Jean, who hated children more than anything in the world. And she told us that constantly. She was 18 at the time and lived in a house with no running water and a wood stove and an outhouse. And she had, by that time, 8, 9, 10 nieces and nephews that would come and have to sleep in her one bed with her. And she wore a big fluffy pink robe and big fluffy pink slippers, and her hair in pink curlers. And she had squares from the carpet factory, like patchwork all over her floor, so it would look cool. And she taught us to dance the Smurf. Was the only time she was nice. But at night, she was like, "Go to sleep, don't wake me up, say your prayers." And we would start to pray the way we'd been taught, and she'd say, "No, you say it like this. Now I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take." Which is the creepiest prayer there is. And in the middle of the night, I would wake up and I would need to pee so badly. But to get to the outhouse, you had to go out past the Native American burial mound that I knew my grandpa had dug things out of, and past the creepy chicken houses and all of the animals. And so I would lay there and rock back and forth, and pretty soon the whole bed was rocking with all of us. Rocking and rocking until Laura Jean would wake up and say, "What does it matter? Why don't you kids go to sleep?" And we'd say, "We have to pee so bad, Laura Jean." And she'd say, "Then get up and go." And we would say, "We can't, we're so scared." And she'd say, "I hate kids, I'm never having any kids." And she swore a lot too, but they're children, so. She swore a lot too, and then she'd get up and start stomping with the flashlight, and she would not wait for us. And you got...
No, finish your story. It's the 10-year. Finish it.
You'd pee as fast as you could. You'd slip your sister off as fast as you could and pee one after another, one after another. And Laura Jean was already walking back to the house, the flashlight with her, walking, and then you'd run after her. "Laura Jean, wait." She'd say, "I hate kids, I hate you damn kids." And then you could see up in the moonlight the Indian Mound. And scarier than any ghost I ever saw was my Aunt Laura Jean.